Good morning, everybody. Hoy va a estar un día con mucho café. Today is going to be a day with a lot of coffee. The rain woke me up about 3 a.m. this morning, and fun times. Well, we've been going through the book of Proverbs, and for anybody that's new to this, I want to say that I apologize for the echo in the room. My wife and I are working on getting our house built so that we can move in to it. And so it's kind of bare in here, but it'll work. So we've been in the book of Proverbs, and we're still in chapter 1. And the reason why we're doing this is because the way society is going, it just seems like we need a lot of wisdom. And seems to me the best place for us to get wisdom is from the second wisest man to ever live, Solomon. So I'm in Proverbs chapter 1, and we're going to start in verse 20. It says, "Wisdom calls aloud outside. She raises her voice in the open squares. She cries out in the top of the walls, at the openings of the gates in the city. She speaks her words. How long, you simple ones, will you love simplicity? For scorners delight in their scorning, and fools hate knowledge. Turn at my rebuke. Surely I will pour out my spirit upon you. I will make my words known to you. Because I have called and you refused, I have stretched out my hand and no one regarded. Because you disdained all my counsel and would have none of my rebuke, I also will laugh at your calamity. I will mock when your terror comes like a storm and your destruction comes like a whirlwind, when distress and anguish come upon you. Then they will call on me, but I will not answer. They will seek me diligently, but they will not find me, because they hated knowledge and did not choose the fear of the Lord. They would have none of my counsel and despised my every rebuke. Therefore, they shall eat the fruit of their own way and be filled to the full with their own fancies. For the turning away of the simple will slay them, and the complacency of fools will destroy them. But whoever listens to me will dwell safely and will be secure without fear of evil." Wow. Now, a lot of people mistake this passage of scripture as though it's God talking, and God is saying, "I will laugh and mock and this, that, and the other." That's not true. That's not God. Okay? God doesn't laugh at our anguish and our distress. But wisdom, okay, Solomon is speaking in an abstract here. Wisdom itself laughs at our calamity. Wisdom itself will mock us when we choose to set aside wisdom. I don't know how else to say it. And it seems like this, by the way, I forgot, grab your cup of coffee. it seems like this is a timely word for the generation in which we live, and especially for the time that we live in right now. I see all kinds of posts on Facebook, and I hear podcasts and people talking about these major companies pulling out of Georgia, and the Major League Baseball pulling out of Georgia, and all these different things. Listen, the problem is not the major corporations. Think about that for just a second. The problem is not the major corporations. The problem is the consumers. You say, oh, but there's nothing I can do about it. What good is it going to be for me to boycott these major companies that I can't do anything about? You're thinking on too small of a scale. About the only thing we can do is pray. And choose wisdom. Okay? Let's walk this out a little bit. How long will you simple ones love simplicity? It's a very basic question. We live in a day and time in which people don't care to know. People don't care about your reasons. Now, this might show a little bit of my ignorance, but I want to say roughly 200 BC. From the time of roughly 200 to 300 BC, all the way up to the middle 1900s, I would say. Reasoning, logic, they meant a lot. I mean, after all, if you said something that didn't make sense, you were subject to ridicule. Now, if you say something that doesn't make sense, as long as it's backed by passion, it's accepted and it's right. He says, how long, you simple ones, will you love simplicity? For scorners delight in their scorning, and fools hate knowledge. If I talk to an atheist, I've actually had some extremely recent encounters with this just yesterday. If you talk to an atheist, they'll say, well, God doesn't exist. There's no evidence of God. Prove to me that God exists. I have a book about this thick. All right. I don't know how well you can see that. It's about 2.5 inches thick. It's called Evidence That Demands a Verdict, Volume 1 and 2. Now, that's roughly about as thick as my Bible here. So, and the writing is almost as small as the writing in my Bible here. Okay? And the pages are about as thin as the pages in my Bible here. So you've got like over 1,000 pages, maybe close to 2,000 pages, filled with evidence for the existence of God. But you've got so many atheists out there that want to claim there's no evidence for the existence of God. Prove it. And you say, okay, page 1. And they say, I ain't got time for that. That's problem number 1. I don't have time for that. Or they might say, okay, well, yes, there is evidence that there is some kind of a creator, there's some kind of God, but he don't care about us. And then they'll say, prove it. All right? I could bring them to half a dozen other books that prove that God is personal and he cares. Page 1, no, I don't have time for that. Tell somebody, go watch a YouTube video that's 30 minutes long, and they'll tell me, I don't have time for that. Or one that's an hour long, I don't have time for that. How long, you simple ones, will you love simplicity? Okay? We gripe about how these major corporations are so hypocritical. They'll moan about the state of affairs in the United States, but then they'll cozy up to China and other countries that have even worse practices. Yes, they gripe and moan about the voting law, how restrictive the voting laws are in the United States, but they'll cozy up to China, that's communist. They don't even have voting. Okay. So we gripe and moan about the hypocrisy of these major corporations, but the problem stems from the consumers themselves. Listen, CEOs of major corporations, and I won't name them because I don't want this video to be tagged. But major corporations, the leaders, they're pretty smart people in general. I mean, yeah, it may not seem like it to you and me, but they're sitting up in an office somewhere and they're saying, all right, I've got this major population here. The majority of this population is listening to the mainstream media, is not listening to media at all, perhaps only listens to advertising, and all these other kinds of things. Morning, Emmanuel. And so you've got all these heads of corporations looking at this massive population, realizing that if you were to do a pie chart or a pie graph of the segment of population that is either driven by mainstream media or driven by advertising, or just simply doesn't care, you've got probably the majority of the population. They're either driven by mainstream media, they're driven by consumer advertising, or they just don't care. And so Solomon says, how long, you simple ones, will you love simplicity? For scorners delight in their scorning and fools hate knowledge. The problem is that people just don't care. They don't care. They don't care to know the truth. There's plenty of truth to be had. I've watched and listened to and studied hours and hours and hours worth of apologetics materials to know that there's a lot of information out there to be had for those that are questioning. In fact, a couple of years ago, Dr. Ken Ham had a public debate with Bill Nye the Science Guy. Bill Nye, I believe, only has a bachelor's, maybe a master's degree in science. And Dr. Ken Ham has a PhD. And it showed in the debate. If you watch the debate, Ken Ham wiped the floor with Bill Nye the Science Guy. But the thing is, the problem with debates is you have two people arguing against a brick wall and pretending like they're arguing with the other person. They're not listening. Nobody's listening because they don't love knowledge. They don't love wisdom. They only want to hear themselves speak. It's a competition as to who can make the better argument, not who can answer the other person's argument. That's what I hate about debates, is half the time it's not about answering the other person's argument. It's about who can make the biggest and the best argument, period. Now, let me back off of politics and society just a smidgen and get back to the scriptures. How long, you simple ones, will you love simplicity? For scorners delight in their scorning, and fools hate knowledge. All right? Wisdom is out there to be had. And that's the gist of what Solomon is saying in this long passage of scripture. You know, turn at my rebuke. Surely I will pour out my spirit upon you. I will make my words known to you. I have stretched out my hand and no one regarded. This is the voice of wisdom speaking. Unfortunately, and again, we see this in the day we live in. Unfortunately, people don't, in general, people don't look for wisdom on their own. In general, people don't care about wisdom and knowledge, actually knowing something. Okay? And so when you have situations like presidents and major corporations and CEOs and people making major decisions and all this kind of stuff, people are like, oh, my head is spinning and I don't know what's going on and I don't know how to fix anything and yada, 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 yada. And that's when wisdom, again, this is an abstract thought, okay? That's when wisdom will laugh at us and mock us. It's like, okay, you could have had wisdom, but now when you need it, it's nowhere to be had because you didn't take the time, you didn't bother to learn how to think. You didn't bother to study. You didn't bother to learn. And that's what he's saying here. How long will you love simplicity? You know, a lot of people, a lot of Christians will talk badly about philosophy. There's a reason for it, and I understand the reasons. philosophy can be an absolutely futile and vain pursuit if left to its own devices. Okay, because it can end up being a series of questions and questions and questions and questions until you question yourself to death. Okay, understand that philosophy left to its own devices can be absolutely, in the words of Solomon, vanity. Okay, but a basic study of philosophy, it's a study of how to think things through. A basic introduction to philosophy will teach logic. It'll teach how to think things through. Pretty much, if A plus B equals C, okay, then it's not going to equal D, E, and F. Right? Philosophy teaches you how to think. That's all it does. It teaches you how to think. It teaches you how to take these complicated sentences and these complicated arguments and break them down to what really matters. Somebody who is familiar with the study of philosophy can watch the presidential debates and they can sort through the arguments and they can say, what he said, that may sound good, but that don't make any sense. Yeah, that may sound good, but it doesn't make any sense. And that's where we are with most of our politicians these days. That's where we are with most of our public speakers these days. They say a lot of things that sound good, but they don't make any sense. I can't tell you how many times the Green New Deal and things like that have been debunked. I can't tell you how many times atheist arguments have been debunked. Still, they're going to stand up and they're going to say what they're going to say, even though it doesn't make any sense. Because we live in an age where it doesn't matter how much sense it makes, but how hard you push it. So, for what I would think is the vast majority of people, it's not a question of, what color the wall is behind me. I'll use that for an example. All right, the wall behind me, it's yellow. Okay? But if I push and push and push hard enough, if I say it long enough that it's orange, people are going to begin to believe it. Because this is how it goes. What's true for you is different from what's true for me, right? So for you, that wall might be orange. And so I can sit here and say that wall is orange, that wall is orange, that wall is orange until I'm blue in the face. And you're going to have a group of people out there because I made the argument that for me, it is orange. They're going to be like, yeah, it's orange. Yeah, it's orange. It's orange because for him, it's orange. That's kind of the nature of the arguments out there. Most of the arguments. I mean, that's the nature of the argument for transgenderism. Okay, yeah, that person has male body parts, but for them, For that person, they think they're female. And so since it's true for them that they're a female, even though they have male parts, then everybody else has to say they're a female. You see that? There's no difference between that argument there and me saying, for me, that wall is orange. And so because it's orange for me, in my mind, you have to accept that for me it's orange. And so you have to say it's orange. There's no difference. Okay? That's logic. That's reasoning. But that just bounces off the wall of another person's forehead in today's society. Why? Because people don't want to be bothered to think things through. It's too painstaking to think things through. Oh, my head hurts. Oh, to think things through. How long, you simple ones, will you love simplicity? For scorners delight in their scorning, and fools hate knowledge. And so what is the result of all of this? By the way, we're in Proverbs 1. Result of all this, verse 28 and following. Then they will call on me, wisdom, but I will not answer. They will seek me, wisdom, diligently, but they will not find me, because they hated knowledge and did not choose the fear of the Lord. Now, if you watched yesterday's message, you will have heard, you might already know, the fear of the Lord is basically a fear of offending God. It's a fear or concern over offending or mishandling God. All right. So, verse 29, because they hated knowledge and did not choose the fear of the Lord. They didn't choose to care about God. They would have none of my counsel and despised my every rebuke. Therefore, they shall eat the fruit of their own way and be filled to the full with their own fancies. And what do we have going on in society nowadays? It's filling up. People are being filled with their own fancies. They're being filled with their own fantasies. That's why everywhere you look, you hear the word racist, racist, racist. Everything's racist. The trees are racist. Everything's racist. It's because they took a word, an idea, and they threw it at everything they could think to throw it at until it's completely meaningless anymore. Okay, so right now the world is having their fill of it. You know, during the reign of Donald Trump, I say the reign, during the presidency of Donald Trump, he kind of fought against all those narratives. Now that he's out of the White House, now that we have somebody in the White House who's a Democrat and liberal, all right, okay, let me put it this way. The leadership of the White House, they follow along with those narratives. Okay? It doesn't matter that our current president has been proven to have lied about the Georgia state law. voting law. That doesn't matter to people. What does matter to people is the fact that he said the law is racist. Just because it requires a voter ID, there may be other things. But he said that, well, I'm not going to get into that. Read what he said. The Washington Post, which is liberal also, leftist also, they called him out for lying. Okay? But that doesn't matter to the general populace, because the general populace is just eating the narrative that they're fed. They love simplicity. And so they are being filled up right now with the fruit of their lack of wisdom, the fruit of their lack of knowledge. All right? And so people in Georgia now are suffering because jobs are being lost, all of the revenue from the Major League Baseball games and things like that are being lost now because of a false narrative. All right? And so the world is getting filled up right now. You can just watch it. It's almost like watching a glass being filled up. The water level is rising. It's getting deep in this country. It is. It's getting deep in this country. All right. We're back at verse 31. Therefore they shall eat the fruit of their own way and be filled to the full with their own fancies. For the turning away of the simple will slay them, and the complacency of fools will destroy them. You want to hear the end of this story? The end of this story is that the left will get exactly what they want. Liberals will get exactly what they want. That's the day and age we live in. They'll get exactly what they want, and it will end up with their destruction. And unfortunately, good people will have to suffer along with it. Unfortunately, that's just the way it is. That's not the end of it, though. Verse 33. But whoever listens to me, to wisdom, will dwell safely and will be secure without fear of evil. All right. So as I'm finishing my last little sip of coffee, let's talk about that for just a minute. Even though the foolishness that's out there right now is increasing and they're getting filled to the full with their own devices, with their own foolishness. For us, if we will choose wisdom, if we will choose to not be ignorant, if we will choose to do our homework, if we will choose to learn from Solomon and to learn wisdom, to learn discretion, if we will choose this, there's a promise. We will dwell safely and we will be secure without fear of evil. All right, so let me take you back to the beginning of the chapter, verse 7. You want to get started off on the, maybe you're like, okay, I've been simple for long enough. I need to get wisdom now before it's too late. All right, let me take you back to verse 7. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. but fools despise wisdom and instruction. Like I said yesterday, or maybe it was the day before, the fear of the Lord is a concern for or a fear of offending or mishandling God. If you can get that, if you can get that principle deeply rooted into yourself, that I don't want to offend God, I don't want to anger God, I don't want to mishandle God, to treat him with a lack of respect. If you can get that deeply rooted, that's the beginning of wisdom. That's the beginning of knowledge. That's the foundation for gaining wisdom. So, as I take my last sip, I invite you to subscribe to my YouTube channel that I apparently have now. Yay! And share this video with your friends. Invite them to this Facebook group. Invite them to the YouTube videos. Let's share this around. Let's see if we can get some wisdom out into the world. It's not my own wisdom. This is the wisdom of Solomon. All right. God bless y'all. Y'all have a great day.